My name's Rich, this is Me, My Bike and I, and today I'm going to try and get this stuck crankshaft out of the crankcase. In my last video I did a full engine teardown and got as far as this. So you can see the crankshaft is still sat inside the left side crankcase. Right there you've got a little locking tab which should be sat in there. So I'm assuming this plain bearing that you can barely see has spun round sort of 25-30 degrees and locked it up. The other thing it will be doing, if we look at the other case where you can see the plain shell bearing is still in the case but the crank came out, you've got these little oiling holes, and if that's spun, because you've got these galleries, there'll be one just up there coming down here. But if this bearing is spun round, these holes would have moved out of position, so it won't be oiling, so it's going to have overheated. So I think the issue is that worn plain shell bearing on the end of the crank, this end, has just spun out, locked up on that little tab, closed the oil gallery up, overheated and just seized. So what I'm going to do is get some heat around this area here with a heat gun and see if we can get the crankshaft to drop out through, going that way. And then depending on the damage on the case, when I take the bearing out, I might need to replace this left side case. But as long as I can save the crankshaft, that's the main thing, because that would be quite expensive to replace, I think. Okay, it's moved about 5 or 6 mil, probably more. It's coming out bearing and all, which is quite good. Well, that didn't take very long, did it? Lovely little rose pattern on my sacrificial mallet. Saves the crankshaft from getting damaged. So this is the new bearing. You can see the little locking tab just there. It was about 30 degrees out of whack on the case. And you can see the groove running around the inside. Now 2 of these oiling holes should line up with the oil gallery on the case, but they wouldn't have been with that 30 degrees out of whack, so oil wouldn't have been getting into this groove, this side, in the middle, so that would have been overheating. And you can see the old bearing here just sat on the end of the crankshaft journal. You've got the oiling holes there. The groove, you won't be able to see the groove where the oil gets down in and round the end of the crankshaft journal. But clearly on this one, oil wouldn't have been coming into these holes because of the positioning. Got a bit of a gap there, so I can get a pull around this and extract that plain shell bearing. I'll show you what I mean. Obviously that's stuck wedged fast. If I take the new bearing and put it on the other end, just slips on and off. See, that's how it should be, because that's how the crankshaft clearly obviously turns inside it. So that is what's locked our engine up, and that is what I need to replace to get it all back together and get it running again. I'm not taking loads of measurements on this engine because I'm just trying to get it running, and it's otherwise fine. But but can you hear that? That's a bit of free play on the end of the big end bearings against the crank webbing. Now, you can take a feeler gauge and stick it down there and see what clearance you've got. You've got a tolerance of between 0.27 and 0.43 or 0.42 mil. I can just about get a point, in fact I can get comfortably, just a bit of a drag, a 0.28 mil feeler gauge in there. This is absolutely spot on. So next job, get a puller on here and get this old bearing off. You can see it clearly there, it's moved about 10 mil and it's cracked. You can see it's definitely shifting. Interesting. Well, I don't know if that was cracked getting it off or whether that was just cracked causing it to be a problem. I really don't know. There's crud going around all the way in a band which just seems to chip off. So I'll be able to just clean all this off hopefully. I mean, I've certainly been able to scrape some of it off, just as in it's just chipped away like loose paint. And it feels a bit aluminium in nature. Metal fragments there. Well, I knew the problem was the bearing on the end of the crankshaft because it wasn't rotating and it was stuck. But removal and inspection, you can see there's clearly loads of shards of aluminium that have welded themselves to the inside of the bearing and onto the end of the crank. So obviously not worried about that, I can just cut that and replace it, but the crankshafts can need to be cleaned up. Just getting a little scraper on it, some of it's just coming off and leaving good clean metal underneath, so maybe it's just it's soldered itself on there, so it's aluminium versus tool steel, I guess. Hopefully that'll clean up and I can rescue it. If not, I'll have to source another crankshaft. But we've got to the bottom of the problem and I can fix it, and we just need to get on with it. So I'm going to have a go at this, see how that comes out, and then we shall take another look. But those are just some of the bits I scraped out a moment ago. But when you compare it to the new bearing, there's pretty much no oil way in there. It's just absolutely full of aluminium. I don't know if that cracked getting it off, I'm assuming it did. Might have already been cracked, I don't know. I don't go too mad. I could use a little cordless drill on it, couldn't I? Just put a pad on the end. There you go, it's coming off. Just need to go all the way round. The actual aluminium goes around to about there, so about the same amount of distance as the bearing spun, so not too much to do. Well, I thought this was going to be really difficult, and it is just a question of time and patience, because it's all coming off. It's not doing anything to the crankshaft journal whatsoever, and I don't think we're going to be left with a bad job. So see it quite clearly now. Look, that's what's left, and it did stretch all the way around to that oil gallery, so it's going quite quickly. Got to go all the way around it, of course, because it's still got like marks, witness marks, but it's that's just kind of very, very faint. And oddly, you can't see any heat damage or anything like that on this, so there's no kind of bluing or strawberry marks, although we have got some on the ends of the webbing there, so don't know. It's gone green from this. Yeah, just a few little scratches on it, nothing too serious, nothing problematic, I don't think. Gives the oil somewhere to go, doesn't it? Give this oil gallery a bit of a blowout with the airline. Just need to polish that last little bit off because it's just sat there. Nothing like polishing your crank on a Friday night, is there? I am nothing less than amazed that that cleaned up so well and so easily and so quickly. Very impressed. Not with myself, just with the fact it came up. That's just the same as the other side now, so I think we can call that a save. Well, proof's in the pudding. Let's see if the bearing slips over it, shall we? I'm just going to test fit that. But before I put the crankshaft back in the cases, obviously everything has got to be cleaned up, absolutely everything. And also I'm going to get these con rods and caps off, because some of that Scotch-Brite and anything else that's been floating around is possibly going to have got down in there. Just a bit of a mystery what happened, really. But I mean, the bearing's steel, this is steel. That's definitely an aluminium ingress, so something's been floating around and got down in the oil galleries, seized it up, but I think we can call this a save. So just gonna put a bit of oil on this. I genuinely have not tried to slip this bearing over the end of that journal yet, so this is live. Perfect. Job done. Thank you for watching this video. This was part 3 really of the XV535 engine repair. It was the part where I removed the seized crank from the crankcase and extracted the bearing off the journal. That should just slip off and on, as you've seen us just slip off and on, or on and off, the new one. But of course a load of aluminium somehow got down through the oil galleries and seized it up and spun it out. Weird, I don't know. In the next video I'm going to be cleaning everything up and reassembling it, and I'm hoping in that one that I'll see some sort of witness marks that show me where that metal came from. When I was tearing the engine down, I started to find little fragments of metal in the very outer side cases, but obviously as we got further in, just see more and more and more of it. So there's got to be something in those cases once I've got rid of all that gunky oil that I'll be able to see where it's come from. And it's been chopped up and thrown around, managed to find its way through the pickup and into the oil galleries, which isn't good. It wasn't in this case anyway, but I think we've rescued this admirably. So I will get on and start to clean everything up and reassemble everything and get it back in the bike. There's going to be a few little repair jobs I still need to do as well. I might make a separate video on those. When I tore the engine down, if you watch that video, you'll see that I had to cut through a bolt that was running through, that the foot peg and brake lever hangers and things like that were hanging off. And it was jammed in there, and I needed to slice through it to separate the cases. So I still need to pull those bolts out, so I'll probably use heat and pressure to do that. I might do that on a separate video before I start cleaning and assembling. And also on the rear exhaust manifold, 2 bolts that were holding the pipe on also sheared, and I'm going to need to get those bolts out. So these look like relatively simple jobs anyway, so I'll have a go at those. But as I said, next big thing on this engine is really the clean and the reassemble and getting it back in the bike and getting it running. I've got no doubt that it will be a fairly straightforward task. So thank you for watching. If this is the first video of mine that you've watched, please like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, ask any questions that you want to, and I'll get back to you, and I shall see you on the next video.